Hello viewers, I welcome you this beautiful evening to our program, The Health Center with Osio. So today, we shall be discussing hypertension. What is hypertension? As common as this disease sounds, it is not as simple as that. Because it is one thing to know the name of a snake, and it is another thing to know how to kill the snake. Hypertension is like that. And what is hypertension? Hypertension means high blood pressure. What is high blood pressure? As we all have blood flowing through our vessels. So through those vessels, the vein and the arteries, the blood that flows there has a certain pressure that it impacts through the lumen to pass through those vessels. So while it passes through that area, the pressure goes at a certain standard measurement. But at some point, the pressure changes. So what we have to know, what changes the pressure? Does it make it to go low or does it make it to go high? Yes, sometimes it can go low, sometimes it can go high. But this time we are discussing of what makes it go high and what that going high means. So when the blood pressure goes high, it is called high blood pressure, which is also known as hypertension. Now, why are we discussing this? We discuss this because it is a disease that is ravaging a lot of people, a lot of lives. And how? Hypertension is regarded as a silent killer. Why is it a silent killer? It comes with no symptoms. Are you surprised? Hypertension comes with no symptoms. You don't know who has hypertension until you measure the person. When you begin to see symptoms in hypertension, that's when complications have already come. So let's pay attention to know when and who has hypertension, because you and I will not know until we measure. Yeah, just like some people often go and take medications because they are having headache. That is not the best thing. First of all, let's begin with our blood pressure before we go to the next level. Medication is not something that you should be very much used to. It is poison that has a certain way you have to take it. Taking this into your body, that's why the liver has to filter it. But it is poison that helps in doing good job for you. So you don't have to focus on it at all the time. You have to really know the steps that you have to use before you go to your medication. So now, talking about hypertension, who are at risk of having hypertension? Somebody whose family has a history of hypertension is at risk of having hypertension. The family has a history of diabetes. The family has a history of cardiovascular disease, that's heart diseases. The person is at risk of hypertension. Who else? Somebody at age, say 55. But this time I won't have to really agree on that 55 now, because if you see what happens around, people in their 20s and 30s and 40s are now having suffering and dying of hypertension. So let's know that hypertension is a age. Being a risk factor is now adults. Another thing is black race. It's common with black race. It's not that it doesn't have much white, but black race suffer hypertension more. Let's go on. Medical conditions can cause this. That reminds me. When medical conditions are causing this, we regard them as secondary hypertension. But when it is your lifestyle that causes this, it is regarded as primary hypertension. Lifestyle or your family history is regarded as primary hypertension. But another thing is obesity. Of course, this one is not a medical condition. Sometimes it can be, but most times it is you that don't do exercise and don't eat appropriately that causes you obesity. So watch your diet and do exercise to avoid this. Then another thing is lack of exercise. So if we know this, we will be able to know that there are many things that cause hypertension are preventable. A smoker is at risk of having hypertension. One who drinks so much is at risk of having drink alcohol, yes, is at risk of having hypertension. One who eats a lot of salt is at risk of having hypertension. Canned food and the rest of them, saturated fats, that's red meat and the kind of meat that has a lot of fat, they are at risk of having hypertension. Now, let's check or discuss furthermore, what do we do when we have all this in our body, and how do we know when we have hypertension? How do we measure it? So hypertension can be measured with blood monitor, blood pressure monitor, which of course you can see on the screen now. So if your reading of this blood pressure monitor is 120/8, as study says, then you are normal. But when it begins to tend towards, at the upper level, tends towards 30, it's still manageable, 120 to 30. But when it steps from 130 to 139, you are pre-hypertensive. Then the question is, what is this value that one is at 120 or 130 and the other one is at 80? The upper one is about your heart pumping the blood, because the blood is being pumped in the heart. So when the heart is pumping it, at the time it does the shrink, then it is the one, that is the rate. It is called the systolic blood pressure. The down one is when it relaxes after pumping, it rests. That is called the diastolic blood pressure. So that reading 80, when it begins to tend towards 90, okay, when it begins to tend towards 90, then that is when you begin to watch it, because you're going to that pre-hypertensive from that, just like in the upper one, when it goes up. So you watch it when you're going towards that pre-hypertensive, because when it reaches 90, that's danger. Just like when it is 140/90, that is hypertension. So from 140/90 is hypertension. The upper one is when it is pumping from the heart, the lower one is when it is resting. So let's go and move forward and get other information that we need. So what do we do to get this into control? There is a certain the National Institute of Health, National Heart, Lung and Blood Institute, declared in 1997 that we all should be eating what is called DASH food, DASH diet. So what is DASH diet? It is called dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So what are in these dietary approaches to stop hypertension? Every part of the world has foods that contain vegetables, fruits, whole grains. These are the foods that are really categorized as DASH diet. So that it is good for somebody that is having hypertension, or even if you're not having hypertension, to ensure that you're taking foods in this particular category to help you to manage your blood pressure, because they help very well. Those particular foods I mentioned, or grains, are fiber that helps in the arteries to protect them and from wearing and help in blood flow. Because the impact of this pressure on your arteries wear it out, such that at the time it becomes too much and wears out, the blood pressure will not return again. You will continuously be having that high blood pressure, which is the condition that we are already talking about. Because it is when you measure this blood pressure today, tomorrow, next, and it keeps increasing. When it is sustained, when it becomes consistent, now you're suffering from high blood pressure. You're suffering from what? Hypertension. So how do we treat this? Treating hypertension comes in different ways, and we really need to get this right, because hypertension just has to be treated for lifetime. Once it starts, you have to manage it for life. So there are medications that are supposed to be used, or that are really made for treating hypertension, and those medications, of course, I don't really name medications in my program, but because of this particular one that I know that doctors give everybody that is suffering from this, I will just mention why those medications are used and where they are used. So, but at this particular point, let's discuss having discussed the causes, of course. One other point, I'll have to talk about something. I want to talk about something before I proceed to that. And that is about when we are eating our food. During eating, or after eating, actually, when you finish eating, your food is about to digest. The blood pressure after eating is not supposed to be high. Yeah, it's not supposed to be very high, because when you eat during digestion, your blood rushes to help in digestion, and it makes your blood pressure to come lower than whatever blood pressure you're having. But after eating, the blood pressure now returns. But to some people, when this blood pressure is supposed to return, it does not return, and they are suffering from what we call postprandial hypotension, lower blood pressure. That's a different problem, but I just wanted to make you know that digestion and fasting can lower your blood pressure. But so in those conditions, you don't need to be monitoring your blood pressure and complaining. You have to address those conditions before you begin to talk about, hey, that you don't know what is wrong with you. Now, going forward, we have to talk about the medication which I just mentioned. What medication can do to your blood pressure? There are certain medications. You have the medication that has to deal with the kidney production of the blood, have medication that has to deal with the heart calcium, have the medication that has to do with your sodium filtering. Now, it is your doctor that has to recommend this medication. He has to prescribe it. Don't just go and take these medications, because the doctor has to know your condition and know the appropriate medication that you need. Most times I know that the black people have been, from study, says that the black people are better treated with calcium carbon blocker. But that does not mean that it is the only medication that they should be used. There are other medications that they as well use, depending on. That is why I always say, meet your doctor to know what is good for you before you go and take medication on your own, and you may not even come out from it. There is a lot of complications that comes from hypertension, and that is what you would not like to meet yourself in. When it happens most often, it is not easily recoverable. So I need to let us know this, so that we don't allow our relatives, we don't allow ourselves to fall into this trap that may not allow us to enjoy this life as long as we are supposed to. Then, if there is any kind of condition in a person that is suffering from hypertension already, or this person is suffering from hypertension, and you begin to notice that this person is having shortness of breath, that the work of breath, the person begins to, it becomes difficult for that person to breathe. The person is having headache, the person is having blurry vision, the person is having heart palpitations or dizziness or even vomiting, please, or even nose bleeding. That is a very critical condition. That is a complication. This is when you have this person within a matter of minutes or hours, the person will die if you don't do anything. First of all, if that person is taking blood pressure medication, please give the person his blood pressure medication before you now take the person out to go and see the doctor. In this case, once that person is having some kind of critical situation, address that blood pressure and then take the person to see the doctor before the person will have condition that might turn the person to vegetable or even death. So I think that is important for us to know, so that we do not lose our loved ones in the hands of hypertension, which is the snake we are talking about at this particular time. What else do we need to know, my people, about hypertension? Because another thing we will need to know is about salt. How often do you eat salt? We have to be careful how we eat salt, and why we have to, and how we, other ways we can manage hypertension. And that includes salt. Some people, after eating or when they have cooked their food, they now go to add salt in their food. That's a very dangerous thing. And even before you add that salt, if you're the one cooking that food, please, as much as cooked salt is healthier than the uncooked one, don't add salt that will be so tasty for that person. Be moderate in this kind of things, because salt, when it is in the blood, makes the blood to pump even harder. So unhealthy eating patterns, I have said, lack of exercise, all those factors mentioned initially should be avoided. So one has to eat low salt. One has to exercise at least 30 minutes every day. Yes, exercise does not mean lifting weight. There are some walk around. Like I used to say, walk around at least 30 minutes every day. In a week, it's 150 minutes. So with 150 minutes a week, you are already doing what you're supposed to do to avoid hypertension exacerbation or prevent yourself from having hypertension. So these are lifestyle changes. Limit alcohol consumption. Smoking, desist from quit. Smoking is not even limit. Quit from smoking. This will help you to live a better life than giving yourself into the hands of hypertension. Then increase, if you're already suffering from hypertension, then the kind of food you eat can as well help. Another thing, food, because it's not just about the vegetable, depends on where you are, but know the foods that contain potassium. They will help you to balance it. As well as, but when I say foods that contain potassium, yes, because if you hear foods that contain potassium and go and be buying potassium tablets or potassium capsule from the store, then you're causing yourself the problem, because you have not checked the level of your potassium in your body. But food can give you a moderate amount of potassium in the body. Food like what? Food like yam. Yeah. Food like yam is good for potassium. Food like banana is good for potassium. Orange is good for potassium. So, so with this kind of things, they would help you to manage your high blood pressure. So we talked about DASH, which is dietary approach to stop hypertension. Those foods already mentioned. We talked about the causes. We talked about the treatment. We talked about the risk factors and the medications to use. Yes, all these are very important, and we all have to save our loved ones from this disease by ensuring that whatever we say in this program, whatever we have discussed here, and in the articles that are always attached in every video, please try and read them very well. Do what you're supposed to do and see the doctor to prescribe. Don't prescribe. That's why I don't want to mention the diuretics, ARB, whatever medications which is not meant for the general consumption at this particular point. Because all we need to know is to be aware of the disease, and as well as know what to do when we are having this disease. And this time, this disease is not what you will know that you have it. I will advise every young person from 26, 27, 28, please always check your blood pressure every 3 months. Then those in the 30s, check your blood pressure every week. Check your blood pressure every week. Possibly, if it's not possible, check it every month. If it's not possible, ensure that you check your blood pressure as often as possible. It is good for every family to have blood pressure monitor. This will help you to know when you say you're suffering from headache all the time. This is a danger. It could be coming from anywhere, any other disease, but blood pressure is one thing that when you know it is there, you now know what to do. When you do these basic things that have been mentioned here, the exercise, the food, the salt, avoid alcohol, smoking, then you're in a good shape. And you check your risk factors, the family background, and every other thing. Doctor, a professionally trained doctor will tell you that, hey, with all this that you have mentioned, let's check another thing, and then you check your blood pressure and know what to do, and other factors that may cause that will now be what you put aside. Treat your blood pressure and then begin a healthy life. Because in the complication of this, there are several things that will happen. Hypertension, encephalopathy, stroke, all these are things that you don't want to see. So I urge everyone to check their blood pressure, to take medications when they are already suffering from hypertension. Medication is something that you have to take for life. And while you are taking them, ensure you know what your blood pressure is. Anybody that is suffering from hypertension should have a blood pressure monitor, so that when your blood pressure is very low, taking that medication at that time will be very, because the medication makes it low. And the next one you are taking, maybe you will have like 100 over 60. And you take another one and you have like 90 over 50. That's very dangerous, taking another medication. So these are the things that when you are taking this medication, ensure that you're writing the blood pressure you have in the morning, the blood pressure you have in the afternoon, the blood pressure you have in the evening when you are taking this medication. It will help you to know when to say, hey, mama, the one I gave you in the morning, let's watch it first. Please, Marian, don't give mama that medication for now. Let's watch it and let's call the doctor and tell the doctor. Always communicate with the doctor. I say this exhaustively like this just to make sure that we are aware, to help us manage this disease when it comes, but ultimately to help us prevent ourselves from having this disease at all. I urge you again, those who are suffering from hypertension, get a blood pressure monitor. Those who are not suffering, please keep doing your exercise, eating right. And those who are equally suffering, manage it, eating right and exercise as much as you can to help us contain, eliminate to some extent the effect of this disease in our society. Thank you very much for having me and your patience for watching me. I am still your host, Ozion the Expressionist, in this program, The Health Center with Ozion. And here in this beautiful evening, I will say goodbye and wait for me next time. Thank you.